Let's call upon the club president, Indranil. Indranil, you have been around since 2015. So I would just like to ask you in very precisely, what do you understand by evaluation? In just one or two lines.
In Toastmasters context, what I understand by evaluation is to really analyze someone's speech and give feedback which is helpful to the speaker, which encourages him to kind of come back to the stage and give another a speech, being better prepared next time around.
Wonderful. Great. All right. So, one other question that we need to ask apart from what evaluation is why do we evaluate? Why do we evaluate? And let me ask this to Nilima. Nilima, why do we evaluate?
Evaluation is required to make the speaker understand how his or her speech is received by the audience and give constructive feedback that they can then work upon and improve from there on.
Okay, great, wonderful, yes. So that's exactly why we evaluate. Now let me allow to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
So now there are two very important aspects of evaluation. One is active listening and the other is critical thinking. Active listening and critical thinking. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between listening and active listening? We are listening, we are paying attention, we are attentive. What do you mean by active listening?
Active listening would be when you pay attention to everything, to the speech, to the movements, and how the speaker conducts himself or herself on the stage. So here you have to be very aware of what's going around, and then you have to give, you didn't ask the second question, then you have to give a critical appraisal that will be your evaluation. I could be wrong. Yeah, Sneha, I would like to see your pretty face. So let's not have that. Yeah, let's have your face. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you can see my face because I have a major.
I can see your face. Yeah, I can see your face.
Okay,
very
great.
pretty. Yeah. And I'm
Thank
N.
you so much.
I'm N.
Anne. Okay, Anne. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. And great answer. You're saying something?
I'm from Goa.
Great. Good to have you here, Anne. And great answer. That's precisely what we mean by active listening. So there are two things. One is we hear. When we hear, we are just hearing the words. We're receiving the words. Okay? When we are listening, we are trying to understand or decode the message. Right? And when we are actively listening, we are doing both. We are receiving the words and we are also at the same time trying to understand the message. Okay? So this is what active listening is all about. Now,
some speeches inspire you. Some speeches make you laugh. Some speeches make you move out of your comfort zone. And today the speech we heard from Toastmaster Varun had all of these three elements. The story instantly took me back to my college life and reminded me of the time when I had to make eye contact with a girl. Although I must admit I was less nervous than Toastmaster Varun. Now what I loved about the speech, number one, the storytelling. It was relatable, it was funny. There were elements of voice modulation when he shouted Oscars. He was actually sitting on a bench reading a book and the imagery of reaching out to that apple. So all in all, it was a very visual speech that we heard. The second element which I really loved about the speech was humor. I've always felt that humor is one of the toughest component of a speech to crack, and today you had it in loads. We had the entire room in splits, and even those who had their camera off, I'm sure they would be laughing while hearing your speech. So really, really well done on that. Now, in order to make this good speech, or how can you make the speech a little better, I have a few recommendations for you. Number one was the pacing of the speech. What I felt is that the entire story took a whole lot of time on the speech, and in the end, you had to rush. So I was just thinking in my mind that when is the punchline going to come? When is the key takeaway going to come for me? So what I would advise you is to cut short the story a little bit and have in a little bit more focus during the conclusion, so that it give the audience the time to kind of absorb the message that you were trying to convey. The second advice that I would have for you is to place the camera appropriately, because there were times in which there were elements of your body that was being cut out, and you were moving back and forth, right? Because of that, it was kind of a little bit difficult to follow some of your gestures. So in an online forum, I would advise you to place a camera a little bit more properly so that we can all see you. And the last but not the least, I would also encourage you to have a very strong call to action. The major theme of your speech was to get out of the comfort zone. And maybe you could have ended with a line like, fellow Toastmasters, what are you doing to get out of your comfort zone? It gives something for the audience to take away. Overall, a fascinating story, which was very humorous and very entertaining. If you could just only work on the timing, a little bit on placing your camera properly and the call to action, I believe it would make the speech even more valuable in terms of content and action. With that, I hand it over back to the workshop facilitator, Ms. Master Vish.
Okay, now we come to what to evaluate. What to evaluate. I won't go by the speaking ballot, because during the club meetings, speakers have their own objectives. Sometimes they want very specific evaluations, and so I'm not going by that. Otherwise, you can just look at the evaluation ballot, the speaker ballot that you get for ISC, and look for what are the points that the judges usually evaluate on. But I'm not going by that method. There are actually 3 important elements that we must observe. One is the speech content. Now, speech content means, how did the speaker begin their speech? Was there any rhetorical question, or was it a setting? Did they open it with a dialogue? Okay, that is the opening. Then the body of the speech, which means the stories that they had. Okay, so you can talk about that. If anything stood out to you in particular, for example, if there was some character you saw, you thought that it was a brilliant characterization, you described that character very well, you point that out in your evaluation. Okay, then there is the conclusion part, the concluding part. How was the call to action? Did they have any callback? What was their foundational phrase? Any catchphrase or foundational phrase? You can talk about that if that stood out to you. You don't need to write everything about the content, just 2 or 3 things that matter to you. Okay. Then comes the delivery, the speech delivery. How did the speaker delivered their speech, which is the non-verbal expression, which can include their hand gestures, expressions, body language, stage movement, pacing, voice modulation, even the way they have dressed, even their confidence. Maybe if someone is looking anxious, it's not explicitly anywhere on stage, but you sensed it. You just sensed it. So write the moment when this was the paragraph, or this was the point in their speech when they looked a little anxious. Maybe their hands were shaking. It's just your observation. All right. And you talk about that. Try to think out of the box, because if there are 2-3 evaluators, something which is very obvious, everybody will point that out. Okay. So try to give something to the speaker which is not obvious to them. Even they might have sensed it that, I was nervous and my hands were shaking. Give them something else, something unique to have. Then comes the speech impact. How did that speech impacted you personally? Now, I've observed many seasoned evaluators, they use this point in their introduction. When they start evaluation, start their evaluation, they have this one line that, your speech reminded me of my father and my childhood. It took me back to my college days. How did that speech impact you personally? What did it remind you of? Or how were you, on a heart to heart basis, affected by that speech? Give that point in their introduction or anywhere in the speech. But that should sound connecting. That will tell the speaker that yes, you have actually heard their speech. So have that personal affected moment in your evaluation. Okay, so talk about the speech impact. So three things: what to evaluate, speech content, speech delivery, and the speech impact. All right. Now, how to take notes. As I said, don't write, avoid writing long sentences. Make small, short form notes, tweetable sized notes. And for that, you can use certain symbols. And I learned this from another very seasoned speaker I was interviewing in one of my podcasts. And he showed me I have it in here as well. I'm going to share that PDF with you guys. So in that, he used asterisk to point out if something was confusing for him. He used a plus sign for commendation, negative sign, minus sign for recommendations, and question mark again for confusing. And asterisk was for if he found anything insightful. Question mark for something he found confusing. So just short symbols, small symbols, and short notes. That is it. You don't need to write the entire speech. Actively listen to what the speaker is saying and find out those moments which stood out to you. That is it. Okay. Now we come to the why and how. Now I've seen so many speakers make this mistake while they are evaluating their fellow Toastmasters, is that when they give commendations, they talk about what they liked and why did they like it. Right? We usually say that this was for example, I loved the call to action and I liked it because it resonated with me. Right? You have given the what and the why. But when it comes to recommendations, they miss out on the how and why, or sometimes why or sometimes how. So in recommendations, there are three things: what, why, and how. What could be improved? For example, there was some point they made, but they did not elaborate on it. So you could just say that, how about including some story, personal example to elaborate that point? Or how about telling us, how did that affect you personally? Or there was no personal story, how about having one? How about talking about your personal anecdote, sharing that with us? So include that why and how. This was what you thought could be improved, that there was no personal story. This is what you observed. Why? Why is a personal story important? Because that establishes the credibility of a speaker. So mention that in your evaluation. This was what was missing. This is why it matters and how they can incorporate it in their speech. So you could just say that, tell them that, think of that one moment when you felt this way. Talk about that moment with us. So you have also helped them improve. So in commendations, we have what and why. In recommendations, we have what, why, and how. Why does it matter and how can they improve? These are the one additional question in recommendation, that is how. Okay. Now we come to one of the final slides, which is concluding your speech. The structure, evaluation structure. So you start with one introductory line. You just tell them that, Nilima, your speech reminded me of my story of perseverance when I was competing in a evaluation contest or whatever. You connect with the speaker instantly when you say that. So start your speech with how it affected you on a heart-to-heart basis. So that comes in your introduction. Then the body of your evaluation, which starts with a clear transition. Have a clear transition that you have moved from introduction to commendations. Now we usually follow a sandwich approach. However, that can be avoided during speech club evaluations in regular meetings. You can directly come to the point if a speaker is too affected or want to hear about one or two particular aspects. So you can avoid the sandwich approach in club meetings. But during the contest, this is the format we usually follow. Why? Because it gives a good cushioning. When we leave the speaker with a sandwich, a good cushioning, they feel motivated to come next time and speak. That is why we follow this approach. So, introduction, in the body, we have two commendations and two recommendations. Usually, this is the case. Why? Because it's easier for them to have two recommendations. Two are pretty easy for them to digest. It doesn't become overwhelming for the speaker. That is why we keep only two recommendations. Okay, two commendations and have clear transition. For example, when you move from introduction to commendations, you can just say, okay, so here are two things that stood out to me, or this is for the glow. Now we can move to the grow. So speakers have some innovative transitions. Now this much you can prepare. You can come prepared with this much, these transitioning lines beforehand. This is fine. This preparation is fine for evaluation. Okay, so move on from introduction to commendation, have a good transitioning line. Then you move from commendation to recommendation. Again, tell them very clearly. Now, I would suggest that you go for these two improvements, or I have these 2 points to elevate your speech. Have that clear transitioning line in your evaluation. Okay, then we have the recommendation, and then never forget to summarize your points. The moment you see the yellow card, start summing up. Summarization is very, very important because that actually helps the speaker understand quickly what were the points you suggested. Okay, so it's easier for them to carry home those points in short. So have that summary ready with you. Start summarizing when you see the yellow card. And leave the speaker with one concluding line after the summary. Never end your evaluation right after the summary. Have that one concluding line that maybe, I wish you keep coming up on, showing up on stage and share many more stories of perseverance with us. Or, I wish you all the luck for your competition. Whatever it is, just have one motivating line in the end for the speaker. Okay? So, all in all, today I wanted you to all have 3 takeaways. One is the radical candor, which is compassion versus empathy. And here in evaluations, we practice more compassion. So radical candor. Second was the magic of I statements. Use more of I saw, I observed, I suggest. Okay. And during recommendations, use what, why, and how. Answer these questions. What can be improved? Why do you think it needs that improvement? And how can they improve? These 3 points. So 3 important takeaways. Even if you remember these 3, everything else is fine.